Sometimes the obvious is not quite what it seems. Life is full of hidden misunderstandings. We're all guilty of doing this at some point, whether it's not researching what causes something, or whether it's believing stereotypes, whatever it is. We all misunderstand something at some point. I think that this is often the case with depression. Depression goes misunderstood a lot. People think that it's a simple problem with a simple solution, and I used to be one of these people. I had many family members diagnosed with depression, and I didn't understand it. I just knew that I didn't like what it did, and I became bitter towards it. Well, that all changed when I went through nursing school and went through my mental health clinical rotation, where I spent lots of time at a mental health facility dealing with people who were clinically diagnosed with depressive disorders. My eyes were open, and that's why I want to talk with you about it. So, do you need to know about depression? Is it significant? Well, let's look at statistics. Statistics say that 9.5% of the United States population has been diagnosed with depression. 9.5%. That's 18.8 million people. So let's break that down. Let's look at it. Let's take the city of New York, okay? There's 19 million people in the city of New York. 18.8 million is the number we're working with, so that's close enough. So that's like saying the whole city of New York is depressed or is diagnosed with depression. That's a big statistic. That's a lot of people if you know anything about New York. That's the overall diagnosis, okay? Let's look at our preschoolers. 4% of our preschool children aged 3 to 5 have been diagnosed with depression. 4%. That's 1 million children from the age of 3 to 5 diagnosed with depression. It's the fastest growing market in this age group of preschoolers for pharmacology. Antidepressants, it's growing for sure. So now that we know that it's prevalent, now that we know that we're likely to come across someone who has depression or has had depression, or to go through it ourselves, we need to know why it's important that this is not misunderstood, okay? Often people think that depression is a choice, or that it's a desire, or that it's a mood swing. We often don't give it much thought, and we just think they just need to get over it. They just need to get out of bed. They need to wake up and smell the roses. They need to change their mind and change their mood and take initiative. Well, too bad it's not that easy. Unfortunately, it is a disease. It's a chemical imbalance. So let's look at this. Let's look at this imbalance. In order to understand it, we need to know what's happening in the brain, okay? So let's take our basic building block of our brain. It's called a neuron. I'm sure many of you have heard of it. A neuron is a cell that's excited by electricity, and it passes messages and neurotransmitters, or those messages, from cell to cell, okay? There's 3 main neurotransmitters. There's dopamine, serotonin, and adrenaline, but we're going to look at serotonin today. Serotonin, as many of you know, is the neurotransmitter that causes you to feel happy or have a good sense of well-being, okay? So if we have high levels of serotonin, we're feeling happy, we're feeling good, okay? Low levels of serotonin, we're in the pits, all right? So let's look at this neuron. This serotonin is going to come across our cell. We'll call this our axon, and then this is our dendrite. These are just 2 parts of the neuron. This might be Greek to you, but I'm just going to explain it real quick. So serotonin, our neurotransmitter that makes us feel happy, comes across here, and then it's forced out of this, and it's so that the message can be relayed to this next neuron, okay? Well, what happens is all these molecules of serotonin are going to come into this synaptic gap right here, okay? And they're either going to be absorbed into the next neuron, or they're going to be reabsorbed into the last one. That's called reuptake, or they're going to stay put in that synaptic gap. Well, in that synaptic gap, when the serotonin that's there is what causes you to be happy, okay? So when you have low serotonin levels, you have low serotonin in that gap, okay? There's another thing that affects it. It's called a monoamine oxidase. We'll call it MAO for short. When this MAO comes in, it destroys those serotonin in that gap, okay? And we all have MAO in us. There's 2 drug classes that help with depression, okay? There's our MAO inhibitors, Those are going to come in and keep that enzyme monoamine oxidase from breaking down our serotonin. And there's also SSRIs, which are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Those are going to bind to this right here so that our serotonin can't be reabsorbed, okay? So these drugs come in to keep that serotonin in that gap, keep you feeling good, keep the serotonin up and you happy, okay? So now that we know that it's a chemical imbalance, it's not a choice we make. People don't choose to have low serotonin. It's a disease, it's a disorder, it's an imbalance, okay? Now that we understand that it's a chemical imbalance, that it's prevalent in the United States today, and that it's not a choice, we can be more therapeutic in our help and how we treat people. In Luke 5:31, it says it's not the healthy who need a doctor, it's the sick. So now that we know about depression, we can go and we can help these sick. It's easier, yes, to ignore them and to not deal with it, but that's not what we're called to do. I hope that you've learned a little bit about depression and a little bit about how it's misunderstood and how it really is a disease and a misunderstanding. So let's go and be those doctors, whether we're treating it or whether we're just being a Christian, godly friend who understands it and who doesn't run when we see it. It's important. So thank you.